Hello, and welcome to this Machine Design EHS Today and New Equipment Digest webinar, How to Create an Effective Machine Safety Training, sponsored by Schmersal. My name's Dave Blanchard. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of EHS Today, and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. Before we begin, let me briefly explain how you can participate in today's presentation. First, if at any time you're having audio difficulties, or maybe the slides aren't advancing properly, simply hit your F5 key to refresh your webcast console. Now, if you're running pop-up blocking software, you will need to disable that to view the webinar. If you have any other technical difficulties during today's session, please press the question mark help button, you'll see that in the upper right corner, to receive assistance in solving common issues. This webinar technology will allow you to resize the presentation. Just click the maximize icon in the upper right corner to enlarge the window. We welcome your questions during today's event. To submit a question, simply type your question into the Ask a Question window that's on the left side of your screen, then hit the Submit button. We'll be answering as many questions as possible during the Q&A session that will follow the main presentation. But please, feel free to send in your question at any time and we'll add it to the queue. Now, please also be aware, today's session is being recorded and it will be available on all three websites, Machine Design, EHS Today, and New Equipment Digest, probably within the next day. You'll be notified by email just as soon as that archive is available. And when this webinar ends, please take a moment to complete the short feedback form that will appear on your screen. And that, I believe, wraps up all my housekeeping tips. Let me now welcome our presenters. First, let me introduce Peter Rigagos. Peter is the current Director of Operations for Schmersal in the U.S., and he has 10+ years experience working for a diverse range of organizations that includes consulting, integration, and engineering design, all within the industrial automation industry. Peter also supports technical colleges by offering a strategic plan for instructors to implement topics related to machine safety automation into their curriculums. Joining Peter is Devin Murray. Devin is the Technicum Services Manager for Schmersal's Engineering Services Group in North America. He has written many white papers related to safety standards and general machine guarding, conducted risk assessments and validations, and developed and reviewed the implementation of corporate safety standards. As a founding member of the Technicum team, Devin has helped develop the company's curriculum of machine safety training courses and recently led their successful efforts to be an ISET-approved provider. Let me now step aside and I'll introduce Peter. So Peter, the floor is now yours.
Okay, thank you for the kind introduction. And once again, I am Peter Rigakos, and thank you for everyone attending today's webinar. Okay, so in April of 2021, we started off a series of webinars that concentrated on the mindset of machine safety. And we explained each core topic by using the mindset building blocks, which I will show on the next slide. Since then, we've hosted 2 additional webinars to dig deeper into each of the building blocks we discussed. First, risk assessment, and second, validation, which included schematic review. Today's webinar is the final building block, training. Now, just because it's the last in the series does not mean that we should think of training as of the last importance or of least importance. Or even when we hear the name training, instantly think it's boring. I'm sure we all agree that training is important, but it's difficult to make it effective and even more difficult to make it fun. So the reason why we chose training last is because we really need to develop and practice each of our building blocks well, and then it'll be easier to develop an effective training for our team members. It's almost like writing a paper in school. I'm not sure about everyone here, but I was not able to think of a title or an introduction to any term paper I wrote until I completed the paper. I know it sounds backwards, but I could never provide an effective name or introduction since I did not know what I was going to have prepared or try to prove to the reader. We even did that with today's webinar. We wrote the webinar and then came up with a title last. You know, this is very similar. How can we as a company create an effective training when we don't know the details of each mindset building block and what methods we have chosen for each? So after we have decided which standards to apply to our company, which risk assessment methods we'll use and have them tested out, and how we're going to complete our phase 1 and phase 2 or validation, we are now ready to train our staff. We will take each of these and make an effective and maybe fun training for the team. This is exactly what we're going to discuss today. Also, I want to remind everyone that joined today's webinar. As always, if you're here today and you've not watched the last 3 webinars, it does not mean you will be lost by any means, right? Now, if you want a recording to the last webinars, leave a comment and we'll get you those recordings. But again, you'll not be lost. You'll be able to follow on clearly. If you've attended one of our webinars in the past, as you know, I typically like to start with a story from my experience to emphasize the importance of the topic. Unfortunately, the stories I share are tragic. That could have all been prevented by using tools such as risk assessment or validation. The nice thing is that today I do not have any tragic stories where someone got hurt in training, thankfully. I do have many more where former colleagues were snoring during the training sessions that they had, but since this is an effective webinar, I will not be sharing those stories today. I will say in their defense, the topic did not really apply to their job, and I feel they had the attitude of, this doesn't apply to me, I'm going to get a 20-minute cat nap. Whatever the case may be, we do not want either of those situations for the training we will develop. The goal here is what methods do we use to make our trainings effective, and in the following slides, we will create a path to doing just that. So before we start the journey to creating that effective training, we wanted to share some facts about safety training, how it's viewed, which are quite interesting. This was a survey done on the state of workplace safety training, done by the Intertech Alchemy, and covered 1,100 respondents representing 4,400 worksite facilities, so a large sample. The survey has a lot of good information, but for the sake of time, I have pointed out some of the feedback that jumped out at me, and I put it in the slide. So as you can see, the study listed the top 3 challenges people reported, which are scheduling time for training at 59%, verifying effective training, 31%, and retraining, remediation, or refresher training at 23%. This survey closely matched what we have noticed in the field of observing company training, especially the second highest along with refresher training. From my experience, it seems like companies offer the training because they have to and do not think to follow up or stay current with any changes. So we dig a little deeper into the study, and I'm going to read these out, but they're pretty powerful in regards to the percentages. So 66% of companies believe that despite their best efforts, they still have employees who don't follow workplace safety protocols on the floor. That's a large number. Companies providing at least 20 hours of annual safety training are 68% more likely to have employees following safety protocols on the floor. Company using site-specific photos or videos in training courses are 2 times more likely to have employees very engaged in their safety training. That's a huge number to just simply use your own photos. 38% of companies use paper and or spreadsheets alone to document and manage their training program. And companies using learning management software, we'll explain what that is in the following slides if you don't know what that is, provide 30% more training refreshers and reinforcement. These percentages are large, especially when you know the industry of training. Okay, so now using the survey information and what we've learned from our mindset building blocks, we need to determine the components of our machine safety training, okay? I wish this could be one training, but depending on the building block, there could be several people with different involvements in the project. So, for example, someone that is not familiar with reading electrical drawings should not be trained or expected to complete the electrical portion of a risk assessment, as an example. And because of that, like my former colleague that took a cat nap during the training, we want to be specific in how we are training to be sure it applies to the right people. Also, another advantage is it keeps the training shorter and to the point. little more specific. Now, the goal of this webinar is not to tell you that you need to train people on the 3 building blocks on the screen, since we covered that in other webinars. The goal here is to show you what types of training methods are effective for each of these building blocks we need to cover. Now, do we use the same type of training for each method? We're going to answer that in the coming slides. So there are, many methodologies and styles to training, such as teacher-centered, learner-centered, content-focused, interactive, participative, which are all known in the world of teaching. But we're going to keep it simple today and apply the methods we have seen work best for the mindset building blocks, okay? Basically, what we think is best from using our experience, right? We will apply a method to each of the building blocks you see on the screen and share examples as to the best methods to be effective, right? And you'll see the in-class, group work, and apprenticeship. So first, we'll look at our fundamental mindset building block, the company standard. That was our first webinar, right? So as a reminder, our corporate machine safety standard, it's basically all the standards we took that apply to our company, and we put them into one document to help our employees refer to one document when designing or reviewing machine safety. So as many here know, there are so many standards. But the good thing is not all of them apply to your business. So let's take the standards that apply and put them into an easy read document for our employees. Now, depending how the document is laid out, I'm sure employees will be able to look through it and find sections they need, but having a training on what the document is for and how to use it will not only help people, but also create an awareness that the document exists. So I'm not sure if anyone here has experienced this, but many companies create great documents, but then decide not to tell anybody about them. I don't think they mean to do that, but I feel they fail to create an awareness of the document. In my past, when I worked in consulting, we did a lot of work with a particular customer, and that customer had a lot of turnover. So I worked with many project engineers, and throughout the projects, I would design something a certain way, and the project engineer would ask me, well, why did you design it that way? Why did you do it this way? And in the nicest way possible, I said, well, the company standard you have told me to do it that way, right? In the nicest way possible. But my point is that the new employee would not know that the company existed because no one made them aware. So it may sound crazy to have a training on how to read a document. I feel kind of crazy saying it, to be honest, but the goal is to create awareness of the document, and more people will think to use it as their starting point, especially new hires. So using that story and seeing this in practice, I feel companies get far with an in-classroom training that covers the standard at like a 10,000-foot view. And instead of basically reading the document verbatim, you never want to do that. We use multiple examples of how the document is used by class scenarios where teams are put together and they can all brainstorm on how to use the document. For example, okay, take a machine that your company has purchased in the past, something like a robot cell, and ask the groups to use the company standard to be sure they are using all the correct components, the following and the correct standards when updating or purchasing the robot cell, right? So create a debate in class. So basically show them 2 examples and ask them to work together to complete the 2 examples. So once this is done, a short quiz should be taken to do that, right? So you're basically creating that class atmosphere. Risk assessment. It has, as shown on the screen, it has multiple areas we need to cover to complete a full risk assessment, right? So in many cases, as we learned in the risk assessment webinar, there are multiple people involved because of the multiple areas of expertise that are needed to complete a proper risk assessment. So to be honest, I'm not sure how it can be taught only in a classroom outside of showing the purpose of risk assessment. But an important thing is, identifying hazards. It's an important step in the learning of risk assessment. And in classroom setting, in the classroom, we can teach these, they can be taught, but it's important that we use a group work method during the training because it allows everyone in the class to discuss, explain, and debate why they feel something is a hazard and why it's not. Since the topic of risk assessment is so subjective, very subjective, so we want to create that debate in class. So each of the sub items shown on the screen can be taught in the classroom, but they must be accompanied by a structured on-the-job apprenticeship program, such that after X number of hours or how many projects, the candidate is ready to perform the task on their own, right? So also, each sub-item must be taught to separate individuals as an on-the-job or apprenticeship type approach where an employee works with an experienced employee or an experienced third-party company if you don't have the experience in-house, right? All these methodologies we shared are required for the mindset building block. So we arrive to our final mindset building block, validation. Okay, you may be wondering why only one of the training methodologies are showing, they're shown what are chosen when training for validation, as it has many subsections. Okay, especially phase one. The reason why we don't feel in class or group work is effective is because many of the phase one subsections are trained during the risk assessment. And at this point, it's mainly important to confirm the person being trained has completed enough projects so they're comfortable completing the task. So also, phase two, the functional testing portion, it should always be done with the machine on the plant floor, right? So it's a perfect time to work together and build hours of experience with the right people and the right training and the right structured program. So at this point, we have an idea of the methodologies we need to use to make our training effective. Okay, now we will add 5 recommendations that can be used to make each of the methodologies we shared more effective. Okay, now keep in mind, the recommendations we are going to share are methods we have seen work the best to build a strong team in each section of the mindset building blocks. So many trainings I have seen are on a PowerPoint with a lot of words, and even some some pictures, but they're from early on, like the 1960s. So there's nothing wrong with the 1960s, but rules were different then. So also, we do not want to push in a TV unit. Some of us remember from grade school that still uses a VCR. Even though the content on the video may be good, people will disregard it as being old info that doesn't apply. It's like if I gave my 11-year-old son the BlackBerry I used in 2008, which I still love. He probably thinks it can't even send an email or a text, which it can. I argue a lot about this, but he would think that it can't do the job, and I honestly think he'd probably start crying if I gave him one. But my point is that he just doesn't think it would do the job correctly. So this is the same. This will lead employees to not trusting the information. And when they do not trust the information, they will not use it or promote it in the organization. Some years ago, a few years ago, I can't remember, I took a marketing class, and the instructor kept showing commercials from the 1990s, right? Brought back some good memories for me, but many in the class complained that the content being taught was not up to date. So even if the content was good, the class felt like the material was outdated and was old methods, and that instructor got some bad survey results, right? Now, the only items that can be used that may be dated are stories from accidents that happened at the facility. For example, the facility you work at today may have had, unfortunately, a safety incident from the early 2000s, so like 20 years ago. Believe it or not, I feel it's good to discuss the incident and show images of the corrective actions that were put in place. This helps show everyone the improvements you made to safety, but more importantly, that you learn to be proactive with safety and not only after an accident occurs, right? So also, we all know that as we can share during our trainings, we need to catch the accidents before they happen. So hence, safety training. So looking at photos and videos, right? Here's an example. What's wrong with this picture? This was actually the picture we used to initially promote this webinar, and I'm sure a few people out there caught some weird things about safety, and we wanted to see, and this is an example you can pull in class, right? So I know I wish there was a setting where I could ask you what's wrong with this, and I'm sure some people are cringing or covering their eyes, but yes, no long hair, no jewelry, no loose clothing, no proper eye protection. Maybe they're not wearing company uniforms. Maybe that's not your shop floor, right? That's maybe not your area. That's not your shop, so people are not familiar with that type of equipment. Stuff like that, okay? And if we remind ourselves of the survey, companies using site-specific photos or videos in training courses are 2 times more likely to have employees very engaged in training. We want engagement in training. We want people to be talking, and I know it's hard to do. We talked about this in the risk assessment and validation slides in the past webinars. You know, there are subtopics within risk assessment and validation that are going to be done by different job titles, such as, you know, people from electrical to mechanical that are involved in the project. I am sure we can all agree that on-the-job training is the best. However, it's important it is structured and planned, such as an apprenticeship program where a certain number of hours must be completed to say any individual is certified to complete a portion of the project. So there is a difference between on-the-job training and something structured with required accomplished hours. And this is why we call it an apprenticeship program. Now, it's an apprenticeship program within your organization. You can call it whatever name you want, but it must be structured and not associated with like a loosely organized on-the-job training, you know, as we've seen in the past, like, hey, you know, Gary over there can train you. He's pretty good at this, you know. Now, it's important to have a means to record these hours. This is where that learning management software comes, and we're going to talk about that in the coming slides, but that comes into play to track everyone that is completing the hours they need. So this is similar to when we all, you know, when we got our driving license. I'm sure many here today have their driver's license, but if not, you know, we read a book, we sometimes take a class. Once we pass the written beginner's test, we're able to drive with someone that has a driver's license for a predetermined amount of time, okay? And then we take another practical test to be able to drive our own. You know, I'm sure we all still remember that day of freedom when we got our license, but yes, we need to treat it the same way. The only difference is we need to diligently record the hours we use to understand what we're doing. The structured apprenticeship program is essentially on-the-job training, but with structure and a predetermined amount of hours for all of us to feel comfortable completing the review with enough knowledge. Collaborative. So this mainly applies to in-class training we discussed during the methodologies portion of this webinar. Regardless, it's an effective way to create an interactive discussion about topics. So for example, you show an incident that happened or a current hazard and ask the class to discuss it as a team. You will get a good idea of how most of the class feels of safety. And everyone in the room will get to understand different points of view, although the tough part is to get everyone in the room talking, you know, but when you do, it's beneficial for everyone to learn the material better. You want to get people talking. You want those people that don't agree with safety, the ones that do, to create that debate, right? This could be followed up with group work, which is another way to get more people talking with coworkers, and it makes them more comfortable with asking questions or opinions they may have been embarrassed to ask or not share in front of the class. So now once the group work is completed, it's important to create interaction with the audience before or after. You know, this is where people learn the most about the topic, right? And this image that you see is actually from one of our wiring labs that we do, and there's a lot of interaction happening in the class, and we create that interaction with groups and so on and so forth to wire proper safety labs. So as an instructor from the past myself, you know, I like to think that I can see who's understanding the topic and who is not understanding the topic. But the only way to confirm it is by measuring the outcome. So some companies, from what we see, do not want to scare their people by giving a quiz after the training is done. But if not, we will never know how well the staff knows the content. But more importantly, quizzes allow the instructors to gauge how well they're delivering the topic and creating an environment where everyone is engaged. As much as the instructor wants to think that whatever they teach, the class understands, but unfortunately, that's not the case, right? Some in the class will get the material and some will not. But if nobody gets what you're saying, you will be sending people back to work with the same knowledge they came to class with. So this is why it's important to measure the results by testing everyone. The results can provide many indications, such as if you need to break the class up into two classes, like a general and an advanced, or simple things like changing the environment, like adding more group work or some more interaction. And again, a reminder, companies using interactive audience response training technology are 58% more likely to verify if a specific employee understood the training. right? A strong 58%. So I am sure many here have attended a training where a paper gets passed around, where you put your name on it and then it goes to someone to record. This is fine. If the person responsible for the document uploads the information to a training database, but then they have to track it and measure how effective the training was and compares it to quiz results we spoke about in the last slide. But a better way is to join the last recommendation, right? So measuring results like testing with this recommendation and use a software that will analyze the content and measure our results. And it's a better way to offer the training to your team. So even if you use a third-party company to administer the training, ask them to prepare a quiz where it can be tracked somehow with software or something like that. See if they have that kind of software. I am sure a third-party company can also track the results and provide analytics as to the effectiveness of the training. So on the slide, we see some of the things the LMS, that learning management software, can offer, okay? Now, you may be thinking, where do I find such a software? And good luck implementing it in my company. But it could be something simple like a Microsoft tool your company already uses, right? There's a bunch of Microsoft tools we have, and sometimes I learn new ones. I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't know we had this, right? Some things like Microsoft Forms, or even go to Google Forms, right? Both of these, their softwares, they can make quizzes and surveys. So this may be a great way to start tracking results. And again, a reminder, companies using a learning management software, the LMS, provide 30% more training refreshers and reinforcement. So on this slide, we added one answer from the survey we did not share at the beginning of the webinar, okay? A question was asked in the survey regarding how confident do employees feel about being trained by another employee. So you can see that close to 19% do not feel strongly about it, and 52% somewhat agree. I'm not sure what everyone here feels today, but if these were the results of confidence I saw from my facility, I would want to fix them immediately. I would want anyone being trained to have the confidence in the people that were training them. If we use my driving example from a few slides ago, if my mom or dad, the people who drove with me during my beginners, if I thought they were bad drivers, I don't think I would have listened to them. I would have nodded my head and absorbed all the advice, but I would have not had the confidence in that advice. Well, this is the same. It's not like a new employee will say anything. They may stay silent, or even worse, they may choose to shy away from performing any safety tasks because they do not have the confidence in the safety training they were provided. Okay, so to prevent this, as a starting point, you may want a third-party company to assist in the training or even the apprenticeship program until you feel you have the right team to do it internally, to do the trainings internally, or even the apprenticeship program. Also, I would suggest using your own survey so you can get real feedback on the third-party company you choose to use. And when you transition into using your own internal team, continue to use that survey, right? It's important to constantly improve, okay? But it is also important to show your staff that all of the safety training is not only up to date, but also done by people who know the topics and are staying current, because the reality is safety is always changing to meet the demand of our changing technologies and automation. What was considered safe in the 90s just may not be the case today. In my past, I offered training on various safety topics at a particular facility. But after offering the training multiple times for a couple of years, I always noticed many new faces and wondered why so many people were being trained for the same topic. I later found out, over time, people come and leave, and company and new people are needed to be trained. My thinking, being a young engineer when I was instructing, was simply just train a big group of people, put them in one room, and you're done. Well, in reality, the training must be constant, right? Because people come and go and are promoted. So in addition to that, if you do not use it every day, you tend to forget some rules. Therefore, I can't stress the importance enough of refresher training, which the survey confirmed as well. I am sure we all have a computer software we do not use often, and it's almost like we need to be retrained every time we open it. I mean, I know I have those. I open it, I say, I don't even know how to use these things now, right? But The reason why is because we don't do it enough, and therefore we're not sharp. You know, hopefully we took good notes, but the same is the case when you do a risk assessment once a year or when you're reviewing hazards on a machine. You may need a refresher training. So the training does not need to be like the first, but there should be some follow-up to be sure that we have not forgotten what to look for. Now, if you do it every day and you take the refresher training, then it should be a breeze, and those people end up basically teaching the class sometimes. But for those who do not perform the work a lot, please be sure your learning management software is indicating when, you know, they should be up for a refresher training. Okay, at this point, I want to hand off the presentation to my colleague, Devin Murray. Thank you, everybody. Devin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter. That was great information. I saw a lot of questions come in, which is awesome. We'll definitely get to those at the end of my section here. If for any reason we run out of time, again, we will email you those responses. But again, my name is Devin Murray, and I just want to build off of that great information and tips that Peter has presented so far to further go into both the need for training and the best or optimal way to get that training message across. Okay, to do that, first I want to start looking at a few OSHA trainings because, as we all know, OSHA is the law of the land, and if they mention training, then we are required to do training by law, right? So just a few examples of some trainings that are required from OSHA. And to list those, we look at 1910, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Standards. 1910.95 looks at the occupational noise exposure, and in it says the employee shall institute a training program. And like any standard and regulation, when we see the word shall, that means that we must do it, right? So we must have this training program for occupational noise exposures where needed. Another example, hazardous waste in operation and emergency responses. Here we see the employees and supervisors and management. Everybody involved with hazardous waste shall receive training. Again, shall, so we have to do it. PBE, general requirements from 1910.132, the employees shall provide training. And lastly, confined spaces, 1910.146, the employees shall provide training to all those employees. Now, I can go on and on and on about all the different trainings that are required by OSHA, but instead, I want to take the time to look closer at some of those methods that OSHA actually requires us to use, and honestly, many of us use these specific methods of training without even realizing how effective they are. Whether you are the one giving the training or you are the one receiving the training, we are using these methods and not even knowing, okay? So to do that, I want to go over Bloom's taxonomy, which is a method used to define the different levels of human cognition. Now, I promise not to go over the edge with this topic, so I'll leave the definition at that, okay? And we'll take a quick look at the different domains defined within Bloom's taxonomy. So the first one being cognitive, and this is knowledge-based. So when we do something with this without training, we're looking for this type of instruction method for knowledge-based. We are trying to see if the attendees, the audience, can recall or recognize specific facts or procedural patterns and concepts. So, for example, we may want to ask for someone to recite a policy or maybe explain what a policy means in their own words. All right, so what does the OSHA General Duty Clause state? Or what does the OSHA General Duty Clause mean to you? Okay, so that's more knowledge-based, the cognitive domain. The next would be affective, and here is the emotions-based. So you're looking at feelings, values, appreciations, enthusiasm, motivation. So here we are looking for active participation question from the audience, and we want to see if they have the ability to solve a problem. Okay, and again, we're looking at emotions. And Peter said it when he first started, that he gives stories, right? And you look at, again, the other webinars that he presented, he gives stories, trying to, bring that message home, trying to relate to the audience. And that's using that affective, that emotion-based domain. The last one being psychomotor, where we're looking at physical movement or coordination and the use of motor skill areas. So, for example, psychomotor skills range from manual tasks, such as replacing a light bulb or washing your car, to more complex tasks, such as operating a complex piece of machinery. Okay, so machinery. So let's bring this back to OSHA, right? So when we look at OSHA, and we look at, again, some of those trainings, here we're seeing that there's a required training for powered industrial trucks. And we see that there is a classroom setting, and then there is a practical setting. And that classroom setting will be more of the knowledge base, right? Just giving that general awareness of the requirements for safety for the fork truck, how to use it, maybe even some of those affective domain characteristics. So again, maybe some stories relating to the applications of fork trucks, some maybe an unfortunate injury, so that the attendees are aware of it, so they can keep an eye out for something like that to avoid it. And then there's also the practical portion, which is required. And this practical portion, we need them to demonstrate that they know how to use that fork truck. Right? So now, again, we're looking at that psychomotor domain. If we look at one more example, lockout tagout. And here, again, as Peter mentioned, depending on the training, the content, there may be different levels of training, right? So you may have the training for the affected employee who are not actually doing the physical lockout tagout, but they need to be aware of what it is. And then also there will be training for the authorized employees who are actually doing the lockout tagout. And for the affected employees, as you may know, that they can just use maybe the classroom setting for that knowledge base, so that they are, again, aware of what lockout tagout is. So they don't try to engage the machine when they do see these locks and tags on them. Whereas the authorized employee, they're the ones that are actually performing this task. So yes, there is that classroom session where we have to have that education. But then also there's that practical part of it where we need to see them demonstrate that they know how to perform a proper lockout tagout sequence. Okay, and again, we see these training techniques. We even use some of these training techniques, but here is exactly what that is, again, utilizing Bloom's taxonomy. So trying to bring this back to what we're trying to achieve, right? How to create an effective machine safety training program. So if we try to utilize these instructional methods or from one of these three domains, we need to determine which one of these are best for our training. So is the material that you're trying to train on, is it for general information? Or is it providing specific instructions? Right? Do these instructions need to be followed in a precise sequence? So you have to do step A, then B, then C, in this predefined order. And if it is that concise, or it has to be that precise, then maybe we think about using that psychomotor portion of it where we can actually see them do it, right? So they can demonstrate to us. So again, finding out which method would help you deliver that message, okay? Some additional tips to consider. So here I have a message, a training message on the slide. It's, as you can see, it's rather wordy. I won't read it, but as you can see, it's long. I wrote it, and I'm saying I don't want to read it. So Imagine me giving this training to an actual audience who needs to retain this information, but to highlight why this is not the best approach for training is when we look at this message, it's too wordy, right? There's a lot of technical jargon in there, a lot of acronyms, PLCs and STOs, VFDs, EMFs, and to some, right, that's fine. You understand what that means, and even if you read it, if you have that engineering background, the engineering mindset, you can say, yeah, okay, there's nothing wrong with this, but we also have to think about our entire audience. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're not over complicating the message. And if we look at an example of trying to fine tune that overall message, what I'm trying to say is, well, before you can load a part into the machine, you must initiate a stop cycle command. And then once the machine is at a safe state, it will unlock, allowing you to safely load a part as per the established work instructions. So that's more concise but clear. And we removed all the acronyms, and as you can see, those acronyms aren't even needed, right? So if you're talking to an operator and trying to explain, again, this safety mindset, looking at these standards that we're trying to implement within our policies, then we also have to make sure that we are relaying that message at a concise level, right? Clear but concise. Okay. At the same time that we don't want to overcomplicate the message, we don't want to oversimplify the message either, right? So make sure you turn off the machine completely before changing the belt. Okay, now, if that's what I mean, just turn the machine off, then that's fine. Okay, turn the machine off, okay? But what if that's not what I meant? If I meant to say, go into a lockout tagout procedure, that's completely different, right? So because I wasn't clear and I left room for interpretation, then I am actually putting somebody in a hazardous situation, right? So we don't want to oversimplify the message. Again, we want to be concise but clear, right? Now, you might have seen, this image before, right? I'm sure you've been to a restroom and you see this, and we know what happens when you press the button, right? The heat comes out, you can dry your hands. So we know that when you press that button, bacon doesn't come out, and I'm pretty sure no one here wants to have bacon from the restroom anyway. But again, is that concept of being concise but clear, right? What does that sign actually mean? Again, we know it, but what if we are presenting this brand new symbol, this brand new machine to our operators? Right? We have to be concise. Okay. Some more additional steps to consider. All right. So again, when you're trying to develop this training, this safety training, some things to consider would be to define the desired outcome before the training and share that beforehand. Right. So making sure that those coming to the training actually know what the training is about. And one of the main reasons you want to do this is if they know they're going to this specific training on, let's say, machine safety in 2 weeks, then maybe for those 2 weeks they are taking notes and maybe pointing things out that they want to bring up to that training so that you can have that engagement. Right? Peter said it already. We want to make sure that we are engaging with the audience. So if they are prepared for the training, then maybe they can bring some topics up for discussion. And having that discussion, especially about machine safety, is so critical, right? So again, maybe define your desired outcomes and then share that with the attendees before they actually get to the training. Ensure that you have the proper training environment. So after these past 2 or 3 years, a lot of training has gone online, right? But again, think about the message that you are trying to relay, and does that platform help you relay that message. So if you have to give a training on safety where you need someone to demonstrate something, well then you gotta be in person more or less, right? It's kind of hard to have someone demonstrate something that you taught them online. At the same time, if you are trying to train someone on a particular machine or a process with the machine, you want to make sure that you have access to that machine. Right? It's one thing to have that classroom setting, and it's a whole nother ballpark when you're able to have that machine and actually show someone, go through those motions, right? So again, building that safety mindset. Next, you want to make sure that you fine-tune and revise the message. So again, Peter mentioned, we created this PowerPoint before we even had a title, right? And, our slides, when I do a presentation or a training program, I go through many revisions before I'm at a point where I'm happy to present the content. So it may be a situation where, you're going through your training program and trying to, fine-tune that message. One thing that works for me, right, it's once I have some content together, I try to present it to maybe a family member, right, who really doesn't know anything about what I do, what I do. But if it can make sense to them, then I have a better chance of it making sense to my target audience. Okay, and if you think about that again for a new machine, whether you are an OEM or you are receiving a brand new machine, well, this could be a brand new machine, a brand new process where we really don't know how to utilize this. So yes, we have to fine tune this message and make sure that it can be understood. All right, and then the last one here is engage the audience. Right, so again, depending on the platform, maybe if you're doing online training, you could engage. You got have everyone have their cameras on, do some poll questions maybe. But you want to make sure that you have that engagement, which is again going back to the reason of maybe defining the goals and then having the goals for that training relayed to the target audience so that they come in prepared with questions or just discussion points, so that you can have that open communication, especially about safety. Okay, so engage with the audience. A summary of what we have been talking about, what Peter has presented, what I try to present here, is making sure again that we are creating this safety mindset for machine safety. Okay. And to do that, we may want to use stats for an effective training method. We want to make sure that we have the right method to match that mindset. Okay. Again, those tips that Peter went over, using company photos and videos. Hopefully, we can use some current company photos and videos that are apprentice program, the collaboration, measuring results. And that's all part of that, continuous efforts for improvement, tracking results using a learning management system if needed. We looked at some requirements from OSHA as far as training, and again, there's a laundry list of different programs that OSHA says we have to be trained on. Okay, and even though OSHA doesn't, relate the training back to Bloom's taxonomy, we see that we're using some of those instructional methods. So now we can take those instructional methods and apply it to a training that you are designing in-house. Okay. Those additional tips to consider: don't overcomplicate, don't oversimplify. All right. Try to define the goals beforehand. Consider that environment that you are training in. Make sure it matches what you are trying to relay with your training and message. Fine tune, right? Make sure you get that message to the where you want it to be. And lastly, engage the audience. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to engage the audience.
All right. Great segue there, Devin. Thank you, Devin and Peter, for fantastic presentation. What he means by that is it's time for audience Q&A. So if you haven't already submitted a question, this would be your opportunity to do so. Let me just remind everybody, at the conclusion of the webinar, please take a moment to complete the feedback form that will appear on your screen at the very end of the webinar. Okay, let me just jump in. Question is, does OSHA have any recommendations on presenting methodologies?
Devin, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead. I was going to actually say, Devin, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, for sure. so OSHA, as we all know, it's they leave a lot of room for interpretation, right? There's a lot of ambiguity when they mention anything within their standards and regulations. But as we saw within, the two examples that I gave for the fork truck and the lockout tagout, there are certain things that we need to see, such as demonstration, which is a instructional method. So they tell us what type of programs we need to be trained on, but they kind of leave it up to the employer on the best way to train. Again, there are certain instances where they have to do a demonstration. So in that aspect, they do provide some guidance.
Okay, thank you. Another question. How long should a test be, and should there be a passing grade of, say, 80%, like a threshold where you have to reach before you're considered to have passed?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we don't know exactly. I know a lot of times when we're working on it, we'll allow the customer to kind of tell us, sometimes we'll say, just make the test really easy so, they can take it and kind of know. But really how it should be is obviously if it's a general training, it should be to the point. But in reality, safety is a serious topic, right? And there's some areas of the test that you might make easy, but there's some areas that you really want to hit home. So I would say, if you have an hour training or a day training, take the points that you really want them to take home for safety. And emphasize those on the exam where they have to get those right, and add up that percentage and make sure they get to that percentage, because you want them to take those things back with them. Now, if it's more of an advanced type training where they're looking at a specific portion of the risk assessment side of things, and they're your only person that's looking at electrical or pneumatics, and you decide to have a test, then it has to be a little more serious. So, if you have 10 questions, but all 10 they have to know, then it's pretty important. But if you have 20 questions, but you really want 10 of them to know, make it 50%. But it depends what areas you think are extremely important for them to know for your facility, and make that the passing percentage. I hope that helps answer the question.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Let me just let everybody know, because we have got a couple of questions. Peter and Devin had mentioned earlier in their presentation, they referenced some other webinars that they had presented, and we're going to send everybody links so that you can get access to those if you would like to watch them, or if you would like to watch them again. So we are sending you all that information, and Peter and Devin can follow up with you if you have any specific questions about those webinars. In terms of some other questions, let me get to a couple more, and if we have a couple more minutes, so if anybody still has a question, they'd love to get some direct input on this webinar, go ahead and submit it. In the webinar, you discussed using recent pictures and videos for training. How often do those pictures and videos need to be updated?
Yeah, that's a good one as well. I get asked that quite a bit, and I really think the example I use is sometimes when we visit a facility, they have a safety video for us to watch. And sometimes some facilities, you watch the video, and then you go in the facility, and it's exactly the same as the video. And you're like, wow, they did a good job. The person actually in the video doing it is, I'm actually meeting with them, and the equipment is the same. And there's some videos that are, the plant looks totally different. Supposedly it's the same facility, but it's not. I mean, it's been painted. There's been new machines. So I think that there's areas that, need to be, where if you do get new equipment, you have to update the pictures and images. And, it's a great opportunity to show. I remember being at a facility where the back was more of a foundry, and they had about 10 machines that did the same thing. Well, they replaced one of them that was like 30 years old, and they put a brand new one. It's a great time to update your safety to show, look at this new machine we bought that does the same thing, but is 30 years ahead of time with new safeties and compare it to the old one. So you can use that to your advantage to show, look at what we've done, and look at this new equipment, and these are the things. So once you start getting new equipment, it should be updated, and you should add those pictures and just show what the plant has and why the safety's been updated. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that makes a lot of perfect sense. I'm trying to see if we have any new questions. Here's a question. Do you suggest giving certificates of completion to each person? And if yes, after what accomplishment? So how often if you suggest certificates, how often should they be issued?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it, but Devin, you might have some more insight on that. I know that you hand out some stuff, certificates, and I know you've just gotten that accreditation you worked on, and I think that might be a good time for you to answer and share with us what you think.
Yeah, for sure. No, so yes, so you definitely want to give out certificates, especially if you are, have them go through an exam, right? So that way they have that document to say that yes, I've gone through the training and I've passed the exam. Also, when you look at the requirements from OSHA trainings, right? When they start talking about trainings, we have to make sure that it's logged. Right, so you have to keep an active log of everyone who has been through this specific training with the titles and the signatures and the dates. So there are some requirements that OSHA calls out for logging the training. But yes, as far as certificates, I definitely recommend giving certificates for those who have gone through the trainings.
Okay, thank you. We are almost at the top of the hour, so I'm going to wrap it up. If you do have another question, though, that you'd like to submit, type it in quickly, and we'll forward it on. Or you could just email it directly to Peter or Devin. Their email addresses are at the top of the page right now. So let me just wrap up by saying, first of all, thank you, Peter Ragakos and Devin Murray. Fabulous presentation today on safety training. Really appreciate all your insights. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Schmersal. So on behalf of Machine Design, EHS Today, and New Equipment Digest, I'm Dave Blanchard. Stay safe and stay healthy. Take care.